The most meaningless belt in UFC history is up for grabs this Saturday between Justin Gaethje and Dustin Poirier.
Who are, to be fair, some bad motherfuckers.
These two put on one of the most entertaining fights in UFC history, with Dustin Poirier coming out on top.
But that was 5 years ago, so what has changed?
Justin Gaethje is a completely different fighter. For the first 20 fights of Gaethje's career, he was solely focused on being the most entertaining fighter that fans had ever seen.
Body shot, hard too. Throws single kicks though, Gaethje sneaks in the left. Gaethje applying the pressure as always. Gaethje with an uppercut that grazes.
And it was working. When Gaethje entered the UFC, he was 17-0 with 14 finishes.
Most of Gaethje's game revolved around pressure, and when the shots were coming back, ducking down in this low, high guard, covering up, ripping leg kicks in like elbow range. He would kick the leg, you're right here, he would kick the leg right here. He would throw as hard as he could and just assume that his toughness was gonna win out versus your cardio.
And in his first 3 fights in the UFC, he did the exact same thing. And this earned him $200,000 in post-fight bonuses, but also a record of 1-2. Gaethje was at a crossroads. He had a losing record in the promotion, but had put on 3 of the best fights the UFC had ever seen. And after Justin's first fight with Poirier, you could see in his post-fight interview the mentality that he was bringing into these fights.
I didn't get into the sport to win or lose. It's an entertainment factor for me, and I will be known as and remembered as one of the most entertaining fighters that ever did it.
Some notable things there. I'm not in this sport to win or lose. Gaethje was solely concerned about how entertaining his fights were, and as he said, I'm sure this is a little bit of an exaggeration on his part after having a loss, maybe a little bit of a coping mechanism as well, saying I'm not worried about the wins or losses. I'm sure he would prefer to win, but entertainment was a huge motivator for him.
People worried about your style, about how long you keep doing this. What, I mean, some time off?
Yeah, time off. I got about five. You know, before this, I said I had 6 left. I got 5 fights. If you don't see me fight live, you will regret it when you're done. When I'm done, and it's not going to be very long. I got about 5 left. So,
him saying he had about 5 fights left confirmed his mindset that he was going to be going into his next fights like a madman. But something changed. If Justin Gaethje wanted to elongate his career and ever have a chance of fighting for the belt, things had to change. The biggest change in Gaethje's style was patience.
Gaethje after the Poirier fight was much more on the outside, feigning his way in, setting his shots up against James Vick. He was feigning James Vick back to the fence and then threw the left hook and the right hand behind it to knock him out. You see Gaethje feint out a jab from James Vick. Gaethje feints again, just showing him stuff. Feinting, level change feinting, and this backs up James Vick all the way up against the fence. We got one more hook, cutting him off beautifully. See how he slides. James Vick is trying to exit out this way, but Gaethje matches him, cuts him off. Now James Vick is stuck against the fence, not where he wants to be. He tries to angle off to his left, away from the power hand of Justin Gaethje, but Gaethje tracks him with the left hand, kind of just grazes, but it lines up this right hand over the top perfectly.
And as for Dustin Poirier, I believe his boxing has only gotten sharper. He has become a much more polished and effective counter puncher, and defensively has improved a ton.
Poirier's 2 best counter punches are that counter right hook that he was landing against fellow southpaw Conor McGregor. After McGregor would overextend on the left hand, Poirier would be able to get out of the way and throw that right hook really nice. And his other beautiful counter is when he's pulling back on people's right hands and blasting that straight left down the middle.
He was having some trouble with the explosiveness of Chandler in the first round, as pretty much everyone does. But you see him here against the fence, he's calm, he's rolling with shots, defensively responsible, rolls with that one, and counter right hook, right on the money, ducking low, blocking, looking up at his target, seeing where he wants to land, and boom, in the fire against one of the most dangerous men in the UFC, Michael Chandler. He finds this beautiful right hook counter. And then watch him track him down. You see this motion. You know it's coming. Pull up the shorts. He does this so often. Then watch him as he tracks Chandler down. Chandler stands his ground, throws the 2. Look how subtly Poirier hops out of the way. And he's not hopping back on a straight line either. He's hopping back to his left side. Hops back out of range. The opening is there. Short, tight left hand counter. And he is extremely good at that. And here's Poirier countering again beautifully, stepping out of the range of that long left hook from Oliveira, overextended, And Justin Gaethje overextends his left hook way more than Oliveira. Like, this left hook, Oliveira's landing in a stance. Gaethje can throw that left hook and not even end up in his stance. So the opening for this counter, pull back, left hand from Poirier will be there against Gaethje. This fight will look extremely different from the first, given all of the changes between both fighters. But let's first take a look at what I think Gaethje's best ways to win this fight are. The elevation factor. I think this is going to be a big deal. You saw how much of a difference it made in the Usman versus Edwards matchup. In that title fight at UFC 278, Leon Edwards looked a shell of himself against Usman, and then you saw him in the rematch and he looked great. I think elevation was a big part of that. If Dustin Poirier won't be able to handle the elevation well, and it starts to show in the second round, he starts to feel it, and Gaethje, who has trained at elevation basically his whole career, is used to it, that will be a big problem for Dustin Poirier, because guys at this level who are both very good, very dangerous fighters, if one of them is significantly more tired than the other, then that's going to be an issue. And the second one is drawing out Poirier's counter left hand. Now, we just talked about Poirier's counter punching. It's beautiful and he's extremely good at it. But we have a clip here. I have a clip here. There's a team. I have a clip here that I'm going to show when Poirier throws that left hand. He is very quick on the left hand counter, so it will be tough to counter the counter. But if Poirier gets drawn into throwing that left hand by Gaethje throwing a leg kick feint, a right hand feint, feigning out that left hand, then Gaethje can look to slip underneath, roll underneath like he often does, or slip outside and rip the right hand, as I'll show. And this may be wishful thinking from me, but body shots. I would love for Gaethje to throw body shots. Dustin Poirier has a guard that is very unique and special to him, but what it does, the hillbilly shell, as some people call it, is it's very focused on defending shots against the head, and he's very good at defending and countering shots to the head, but the body is open when he's doing that, and we'll get to that as well. Let's start off with this countering of the left hand, which Justin Gaethje did beautifully. Look at him slip on the outside of the punch and blast the right hand. And this wobbled Poirier bad in the third round. And this is a Gaethje who was not as technically proficient in my mind. He's improved quite a bit. And he still found that beautiful right hand counter. I think it wasn't on the, he didn't counter the counter here. Poirier was just looking to set up his own offense. But I think if Gaethje can draw out this left hand, he knows it's coming. It'll be easier to counter if he knows it's coming. Boom. Just like that. Slipping outside, ripping, slipping under, ripping. It'll all be good. And then to Poirier's weird defense, like I was mentioning. Max Holloway was having a lot of trouble with it. It's this hillbilly shell. Everything is focused on defending up here. If you can go to the body, it is open. But Max Holloway was headhunting largely. Like that is, it's so focused on defending against the head. So if Gaethje can go to the body like Holloway does right here, right hand to the body, it'll land. And with the elevation, with that whole factor, that will be big for Justin Gaethje to drain on the stamina of Poirier, as well as the elevation draining on the stamina could lead to a quicker finish for Gaethje. And then we go to Dustin Poirier's 3 ways to win, starting with the body work. Similar to what I want Gaethje to do, it's at elevation. Working the body is never going to be a bad idea, and especially against Justin Gaethje, who has been susceptible to body shots. Eddie Alvarez showed it beautifully, which I'll get into once we get to the clips. Punishing the ducking tendency. This is Gaethje's main tendency defensively. He likes to duck down with his hands high. Although he has changed his style, like I mentioned before, that ducking habit is still there. It's very prominent. He does it pretty much in every fight and will do it to pretty much any strike that he sees coming. It's a pretty safe spot for him, but if you can start to time that, you can start to time uppercuts up the middle, knees up the middle. I know Poirier is not that flexible with his legs in general, But if you can time the knees or the uppercuts and draw out that ducking tendency, then you can go to the body. Lots of things that you can capitalize on. And then number 3 is countering the wide punches. Again, Gaethje's changed, but his technique hasn't changed that much. He still throws wide looping shots. He's gotten a little bit tighter in certain spots, like his uppercut is really tight in moments. His left hook can be really tight in moments, but he still is someone who likes to throw bombs, and he will throw bombs with the left hand and the right hand, and he overextends on the right hand pretty much every time. So if Poirier can pull back on that right hand like I showed you earlier against Michael Chandler, how he did it there, pull back on the right hand, blast the left hand, the openings are going to be there, as I will show you here. And this is the Eddie Alvarez fight. You see Gaethje with that duck down, hands high response. What is open? The body. And Eddie Alvarez, this was a huge part of him getting the win. In a more recent fight, just to show you that he does still have this habit, you see Fiziev go in, and it's the same thing. Ducking low, bending over at the waist, hands high. Yeah, it's just a habit of his, and it's not going to be something that he can just kick. And here, watch Fiziev. Fiziev was picking up on it. He was throwing knees, he was throwing uppercuts, but he could never find the perfect shot. But watch Fiziev slap with the left hook to get that reaction. He loads up a big uppercut and lands it right as Gaethje is ducking down with that high guard. And listen to the commentators.
Good uppercut by Fiziev, and that's a really good read.
And Bisping notices it's a really good read. He mentions how Gaethje might be wanting to take him down, but Daniel Cormier immediately after says Gaethje has a habit of ducking down into his punches, but also defensively reacting. And he does it immediately after. Ducks down and wide looping shots. That left hook is wide, and the right hand is even wider. If Poirier can stay in the pocket here for a second, lean back out of the way of the right hand, have his feet planted, there is a lot of opportunity to counter. It takes a long time for him to recover that defensive stance. And Poirier, one of the slickest counter punchers in the UFC, that will be something that he'll be looking to counter. With all of this said, it is now time for me to give my final prediction. The elevation in Salt Lake, I think, will play a huge factor. If Justin Gaethje can avoid getting badly hurt against Poirier in the early rounds and begin to make Dustin miss more than Dustin was possibly expecting to, Gaethje can begin to impose his will, ramping up the pace and really showcasing that elevation training that he's done for his entire career. But will Justin Gaethje be defensively responsible enough against Dustin Poirier, who has shown to be one of the best counterpunchers and just boxers in general that the UFC has ever seen? Only time will tell, but if I had to make a prediction, my pick is going to be Justin Gaethje by 3rd round TKO. The way I see the fight going is Justin Gaethje being defensively responsible enough and also tough enough to absorb some of the shots of Poirier and also get out of the way of a few of them as well. I think the elevation, like I said, will play a huge factor, and Dustin Poirier will start to feel that as he has not acclimated himself around the midpoint of the 2nd round. Once Gaethje picks up on Dustin slowing down ever so slightly, Gaethje will start to turn it up. And I think at that point it'll be hard for Dustin to regain that 2nd win and for him to stop the momentum that Gaethje will begin creating. And that will lead to eventually Gaethje getting a 3rd round finish.